everyone. Welcome in to another episode of the Inside Voice podcast. I am so glad you are here. If you're new or if you don't know me, I'm Jess. I am a country radio broadcaster by day, podcaster by night, and just really passionate about encouraging people to live the life that they know is out there for them, the life that has been designed for them by our Creator, the life that is the most fulfilling and abundant life for them, and to make changes today in order for that life to come to fruition. So I'm so glad that you are here. Bear with me, I'm a little bit under the weather. A couple of things, like I'm just feeling like super run down. The biggest thing is I hate summer. Like if you know me, you know summer is not my favorite. I hate when it's hot. I hate when it's dry. I hate when it's humid. And it's really the only season that stands in the way of me and fall. And fall is my favorite season, which is just another reason why I cannot stand summer. That leads me to the good news. The good news is that fall is getting closer. We are so close to being done with August. We are in the final week of August. And then it's like this nice slippery slope into the fall season. And I am here for that. Also, how happy are you if you're a football fan that we've got football back as well? I just got the text last week from my fantasy football commissioner, which I was a little concerned. I feel like the text came in a little bit late, and I thought maybe they had just kind of kicked me out of the group without telling me they had kicked me out of the group, but I'm in. We're back for another round of fantasy football as well. Here's something fun. If you do fantasy football, would you share with me your fantasy football team name, especially if it's like really creative, punny, whether it's football related or pop culture related, country music related, since I do work in country music. Mine is the Backstreet Boys because I'm a huge Backstreet Boys fan. Just saw them in Vegas. It was chef's kiss. I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. Begrudgingly most of the time, but have been since the Troy Aikman days. And so I figured, that was a fun little pun, kind of works with both of the things that I like. So share yours. You can drop them in the comments or hit me up on social media at Miss Radio Jess. I'd love to hear your fantasy football team name. Also tell me how many leagues that you're in, because I know some people are all in. I do one, that's all I can handle, but there's somebody that I know, he does 11 leagues, 11. And does well as well. It's insanity. We are continuing on in our series. This is actually the final week of our You're Lying to Yourself series, talking about the importance of what we think about. It's so funny. I was just with a group of friends over the weekend. We're so #blessed. We have friends that have a boat. And so as much as I complain about summer, I'm like, I will do the summer activities. I will do the boat. I will do the pool. I will do this beach, whatever it is. So we were out on the boat and we were talking about how important it is to think about what you're thinking about. And it was so in line with what we've been doing on this podcast for the last month. I didn't bring up this conversation, but I definitely dove into it with the people that I was with. But just understanding that what we think about really impacts the way that we live. We think thoughts can be so fleeting, it doesn't really matter, but it really does, especially if those thoughts are coming back into the forefront of your mind over and over and over again. Eventually your brain is just going to latch onto that thought and make it its default mode. Your brain wants to run efficiently. Your brain wants, it's processing so much information at any given second that the more that it can streamline its processes, it wants to get to that level of if you're going to think about this all the time, we're going to find the fastest way to get to it so we can move on to the next thing. Unfortunately, if your brain is quickly jumping to thoughts that are negative, self-limiting, degrading, detrimental to your success and your growth, it's going to lead to decline in your life. So you really have to be cognizant of the things that you're dwelling on, the things that you're ruminating on, you're meditating on, the things that you're just allowing to get into your brain on a consistent basis. So we've been unpacking quite a few lies over the last couple of weeks. The first week we really dove into, this idea of neuroplasticity and how your brain creates those neural pathways like we just talked about. And then we got into some various lies that I think are really big that we tend to, that just, they become like our default. And from these bigger lies, obviously littler lies are going to start, making their way into your brain. But the big lies are things like, my thoughts are facts. That's the first thing that we talked about. What you think about isn't necessarily true. That's the interesting thing about your brain. It can't necessarily differentiate between truth and lies, like your brain on its own. Your beliefs, your experiences, who you are as a person, that's what starts to determine whether it's true or not. But your brain alone it doesn't know like if this is fact or not. So if you tell yourself all of these negative things about yourself, like I'm never going to be good at this, or I'm a terrible that, or whatever, your brain starts to go, oh, that must be true because they think about it a lot. So recognizing that as a lie. The next week we talked about I look so dumb, when you're trying to do your own thing or trying to branch out and start something new, you're always worried about what other people are thinking about you. We also talked about a lie of feeling like it's always going to be this way, like you're stuck, you can't change, they can't change, things won't get better. Big lies there. Last week was all about failure, and how oftentimes we can think of ourselves as a failure, period, end of story, as a person, but maybe also in different aspects of our life. I'm a failure at being a parent. I'm a failure at being a spouse, or an employee for this company that I work for, or I'm a failure at the resolutions that I set for myself earlier this year. Like wearing failure as an identity, and how that is so problematic if you're going to do anything in life, or if you're just going to live a life that is abundant and full. You know what I mean? So today I want to get to the big one. The biggest lie that we tell ourselves that honestly I think affects every aspect of our life. And ultimately, if we continue to let this lie dominate our brain, it will ultimately lead us to a very dangerous place in life. It's a place that I think that my mom got to. If you don't know me, if you're new, my mom took her own life in 2021, and it was a lot. And I think there was a lot of this lie that was taking over her brain and taking over her mentality that, and I don't want to speak for her because obviously I'm not her. I wasn't in that situation. I don't know. She didn't share a lot with me, but, I think it ultimately led her to make the decision that she made. And that lie is, I am not enough. That is a lie that I think a lot of us believe, a lot of us think about more often than we should, even if that lie, even though if the lie is not coming across in those specific words. Maybe you're not telling yourself every single day in the mirror, I am not enough, but maybe it's coming through in other ways, like I'm not smart enough to be sitting in this room with these people, at your job. I'm not pretty enough to, compared to these girls on social media. I'm not talented enough. I want to pursue this passion, but I don't feel like I'm talented enough to be successful at it, or for anybody to take me seriously. I'm not clever enough. I'm not funny enough. I'm not disciplined enough to, take control of my health and embark on this new journey of fitness. Like, I am not enough comes through in so many different ways. And I think the more that we ruminate on this, the more that we allow those thoughts to come in, the more we do ourselves a disservice, the more we hold ourselves back, the more that we tell our creator that what he made is not good enough, that he made a mistake, that he failed in putting us together, fashioning us together in our mother's womb. And that is a huge slap in the face to the Lord of the universe. Can we just be honest? But ultimately, like I said, this is a lie that will affect every aspect of your life. If you don't think that you deserve to be here, if you don't think that you have a place at the table in your own life, if you believe that you are not the main character of your own story, that will affect the way that you show up for your family. That will affect the way that you put yourself out there when it comes to your job. That will show up in the way that you show up for others and operate on your day to day. That will show up in little things like, how do you care for yourself? How often do you go to the doctor to make sure that your body's healthy? How often do you eat food that is nutritious? How often do you hydrate throughout the day? Like, it sounds crazy, but if you truly devalue yourself that much, if you don't hold yourself in a high regard, you're not going to care for yourself when it comes to even just basic needs. I get that that sounds extreme, but again, looking at what happened with my mom, she got to a point where like she just didn't care about her life anymore. I think that's the most ridiculous way to oversimplify what happened in her life is she just got to a point where she felt like her life didn't matter anymore, and it didn't even matter to herself. And that's scary. That's really scary. And so I want us to nip this lie in the bud. I want us to dismantle this lie to prevent people from going down that slippery slope, to prevent people from feeling like they're hopeless and there's nothing to live for anymore. Like, this matters so much to me. And I hope that you feel that as well, that there is value in you. You are valuable. So telling yourself that you're not enough is the complete opposite of what you should be telling yourself. You are enough. You may not be perfect. You may have ways that you can improve. You may have things that you need to work on, but you are enough and you are worthy enough to make those changes and to care more for yourself. Other versions of this lie can be things like, I don't deserve blank. No one will ever blank. They'll never see me because of blank. I'll always be blank. Like, you can fill in those blanks with whatever it is that is just like ruminating in your mind right now. Maybe it's that they'll never love me, or I'll always be a failure at this thing, or I'll always be stuck in this spot. See how just feeling like you're not enough leads to those other lies that we had talked about throughout the last month? I mean, it's almost like if this was a tree and the branches were all those other lies that we've talked about, I am not enough is like the stump. It's like the roots going into the ground. It's where all of these other lies come from. It's where they all blossom from. And we got to get into those roots and just get it out. I think I talk a lot about my mom, and I hate that I'm putting so many words into her mouth. But I think from a personal standpoint, my mom wasn't super affectionate, and I've learned that was just how she operated. There were ways that she showed up and showed that she loved me, that I hold on to. But there were other ways that I needed to be loved. Like, I'm a words of affirmation kind of person. I'm a quality time kind of person. Like, I feel the most loved when I get those things. When I get you, to myself, or if I get quality time with you and we're sharing in good conversation, and, you take a moment to build me up, I take a moment to build you up. Like, I feel like that fills my cup, right? And I didn't get that so much from my mom growing up. And in a way that has created some fears of abandonment, some fears of, maybe like compulsion. Like, this person's only here because they have to be here. They're only here because I asked them to be here. They're not here because they genuinely love me, or they're not saying these things because they love me. They're saying them because they're just nice things to say. Like, I have like a level of trust issues because of the upbringing that I had, because of the relationship that I had with my mom. And, you think about your mom is like the one that is supposed to love you the most. Like, that's one of the people in your life where affection and adoration and this feeling of them being proud of you, like, that's just supposed to ooze out of them, right? That's your mom, for crying out loud. And then to see, looking back at what ultimately happened with her, yeah, it feeds into these feelings of abandonment. It fuels the fire of, yeah, they might be here now, but they may not be here forever. And you're like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I've had to work a lot on dealing with those issues and understanding that, this idea, if my mom didn't love me, or I didn't feel the love that I needed to from her, then no one is going to love me. I've had to deal with those. That is a big, big lie. That is a lie that is definitely fed into this idea of I am not enough. You know what I mean? So it's very important that we not only identify the areas that we feel like we're not enough, but also try to figure out why we don't feel like we're enough. You know what I mean? And oftentimes, I think that it can come from various things. Like if we look at the origin of this lie, it can come from abandonment. It can come from neglect. It can come from a separation or a breaking or heartache. You know what I mean? I think about like divorce or the loss of a family member or the loss of a friendship or the loss of a job. Like a lot of loss can make us feel the loss of health. You know, you might go to the doctor and get a diagnosis that you were not expecting and not prepared for. And that can make you feel like, well, I'm not healthy enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved enough. I'm not worthy enough. You know, it fuels that fire. It makes that lie of I'm not enough so much bigger. You know what I mean? And it can also come from past experiences and past failures, you know, places where you've come up short. And then you feel like you're just not enough. You know, I shared with you last week that like all I wanted to do was play softball for the rest of my life. Like I wanted to play professionally, wanted to play for Team USA, all that stuff. And it obviously didn't happen. Letting go of that failure and recognizing that doesn't mean that I'm going to fail at everything else in my life. Just because that was the biggest dream that I had and it didn't happen doesn't mean I'm not going to find another dream. I'm not going to find something else, a different route, maybe a better route, or maybe the route that God always had for me. And softball was just a tool to get me to that place. You know, that's another thing. That's another sign of growth where you look at failure and you think, okay, yeah, it didn't happen. Yes, I made the mistake. Yes, it failed, but I can turn that into something even greater. I can turn that into an asset. You know, in Christianity and faith and at church, you know, they always say that like your biggest test will become your biggest testimony. Like that's a part of taking failure and turning it into something good. That's a part of taking something that could lead you down a path of feeling like you're not good enough and turning it into like your best ally, your best advocate for why you are good enough, you know? Like maybe you had a failure back in the day and it was hard, you know? Maybe you set out to do the fitness thing and it didn't work out well for you and suddenly it's been 6 months since you've seen the gym, you know? Rather than saying, well, I'm not good enough to do this, I'm a failure, maybe you look at it as like, okay, let me actually dissect this and analyze why it didn't work. What led to me putting this aside or not making this a priority anymore, and turn it into now I've got a strategy for the next time I try again. Does that make sense? So it's not I'm not good enough to do it. It's, hey, I failed in some areas, but I still am good enough to care for myself in that way. So how can I take those failures and turn them into a success? I think one of the reasons why this lie tends to stick a little bit more is because our environment can lead us to believe that we're not good enough. We talk a lot about social media, and social media is one thing that can be it can build you up, it can motivate you, it can make you feel good, but more often than not, it has a way of tearing you down. You can look at social media and say, they've got it all figured out. They've got the perfect life because you're looking at somebody's highlight reel. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at all their trophies. You're not looking at all of the struggle behind the scenes. You're not looking at the failures behind the scenes. And even when people present their failures to you, even when they share them with you, they're so far beyond it and they've already found another success that they're like, but I'm fine. I got it figured out. So it's like they're taking, even the way they're presenting their failure is like a success. You know what I mean? And oftentimes it's hard for us to see that as motivating and more it makes us feel like we're less than. Plus you get all the people that are throwing ads at you, trying to influence you to buy things. They're constantly telling you, this is wrong with you, but here's how to fix it. You may not be this, but you'd be so much better if you were this, you know, like it's the messaging and it gets to you after a while. And sometimes I find myself scrolling through social media and I'll admit my screen time has been out of control the last couple of weeks. I've just been mindlessly scrolling and like, I find myself almost feeling like physically sick when I get off of social media, like emotionally drained, mentally drained, just like I'm heavy after being on social media. And I think it's because so many things are making you feel less than. These perfectly filtered, perfectly curated things. And again, even in people's mess, they're like perfectly curating the mess just to show you that they've still got it all figured out, even though this was hard for them, or even though this was a mistake, or this was a failure, And it's like, I find myself just like physically feeling the effects of social media more than just mentally and emotionally these days. Like, oh, it's rough. But social media can definitely confirm these feelings of I am not enough. And so you gotta be really careful with who you're following, who you're engaging with, how much time you're spending on those platforms, because they can definitely like solidify the idea of I am not enough. I think also the words of others can be confirmation. Maybe it's somebody that you loved and respected, close family member, close friend, a spouse. They said something to you that just made you feel worthless, or they did something that made you feel worthless. It could be a betrayal. It could be something that they like a mistake that they made you feel a certain way. It could be behavior that you're getting from them, but it doesn't even have to be somebody close. It can be like a complete stranger on social media who's just a jerk. I mean, people love to sit behind their keyboard and just be awful human beings. And the funny thing is, like, these are things that they would never really say out loud to the person that they're typing to. You know what I mean? Like, gross. But yeah, I think, it could have been like something that was said to you growing up from a parent that has just stuck with you, or a teacher, or a coach, or a mentor, or an older sibling, and it has messed with you. I want to encourage you to dissect why you feel that way from those words, and then just let it go. Forgive the person, forgive yourself, whatever you need to do, just let it go. It doesn't mean you have to be besties with that person again. It doesn't mean that you have to be in that person's life anymore, but free yourself from the infraction. Whatever the thing was that was said or done or whatever it is, free yourself from that so that way you can start feeling worthy again. I think also we have an ability to do worst case scenario. Our anxiety is high, our social anxiety is high. And I think that often can lead into I'm not enough, because we can start to think like all this bad stuff's going to happen and I deserve it. It's like, no. First of all, that bad stuff is probably never going to happen. And second of all, like, that doesn't mean that you're not enough. It just means that life is hard and it's not perfect. Okay. So stop again, like, a lot of these lies, like, we start to wear them as an identity. It's like a coat that we're putting on. Like, take the coat off, for crying out loud. Things happen and thoughts come into your mind, but it's not who you are. And I think that's the biggest way to dismantle this lie of I am not enough, is remembering your identity, remembering who you are. I wrote this down. I'm going to read it because I feel like the way that I wrote it was exactly the way I want to say it to you, and I don't want to mess it up. But the easiest way to dismantle this lie of I am not enough, which stems from this feeling of being unworthy, is you're not here by mistake. There's a divine creator who made you fearfully and wonderfully for a reason. I see this on social media a lot. It's this audio that, people put it over like beautiful videos of mountains and oceans and sunsets and nature and animals and all this stuff. And it's like, to think, I'm going to butcher it because I'm going to paraphrase it, but to think that the God who made all of this, breathtaking mountainscapes, astonishing oceans and beaches and the clouds in the sky and the stars in the universe, like the God that made all of the beauty that we see around us. Like, take a moment, just look around. The next time you're driving down the road, like, look at the trees, look at the flowers, look at the grass, look at the mountains, look, find something that you can look at that just leaves you in awe, and remind yourself that the God that made that also made you. The God that made all of that beautiful stuff that we see on this planet, all of the stuff that we see outside of this planet in the universe and in the galaxy, like the God that made all of that, as beautiful as it is, as mesmerizing as it is, the God that made all of that stuff, he looked at it and he said, you know what? It's not complete without you. Do you hear me when I say that? The God that made all these other people on the planet, these people that you look up to, these people that you think their lives are so perfect, these people that you admire and respect, and they're great leaders and they're great thinkers and they're great movers and makers, like they've done something with their life. The God that made those people also said, I need you on this planet. Sure, they're great, they're wonderful, but he needed you too. And he made you. He made you. He knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. He knew you. He knew who you were going to be. He knew who he designed you to be, what you're going to look like, what you're going to sound like, your likes, your dislikes, your quirks, your talents, your gifts, your failures, your insecurities. He knew everything about you. And he said, yeah, I choose that person. I want that person. Let's put that person on the earth. The more that you can I'm going to get emotional just thinking about this, but the more that you can recognize that, the more that you can remind yourself of that, not in a way to like puff yourself up and be proud, prideful and feel like, oh, like I'm God's gift to man. No, but the more that you can just recognize that there is a reason why you are here and that you are so divinely loved, the better it's going to be for you. The more you're going to feel like, yeah, I deserve to be here. I am enough. I am worthy. I am chosen. Like, think of all the ways that God speaks about us in the Bible. My goodness, I'm like about to just do waterworks here. This is why I'm doing this podcast, for crying out loud. God calls you his masterpiece. He calls you his handiwork. He calls you chosen. He calls you friend. He calls you blessed. He calls you known. Oh my goodness, how many times people feel like they're alone, that nobody understands them, nobody knows them, like nobody's in their life. God knows you, and he calls you known. He calls you beloved. He calls you redeemed. He calls you precious. He calls you his. So if you're feeling unworthy, if you're feeling unchosen because of what somebody did or something happened or whatever, God chooses you. God says you are mine. Sit on that for a second. What do they say in the Bible? Selah, pause, reflect, think about that. We serve an awesome, awesome God, And I remember going through this a couple of years ago because, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. Like, I'm a people pleaser. I like when everybody's happy and like when we're good and we feel good. And, a lot of times that can cause me to like hide myself or not even know who I am really, because I'm trying so hard to like be what everybody else expects me to be. And I remember there was one moment like, it just drove me to my knees a couple of years ago, where God just asked me like, are you even thankful that I made you? Like, are you even like, do you realize like who you are? Who I made you to be? Like, and I remember thinking like, I felt so guilty at first, but then it was like, yeah, I am thankful. I'm thankful to be me. I'm thankful to be the person that God made me to be, with all of my wonderful qualities and all my quirky qualities and all my bad qualities, and again, this is not to be prideful and this is not to boast in any way, but it's just to respect the work that God has done. The way that he made you the beautiful person that you are. So to fix this lie, I think that's number one. And at the beginning of the year, we did a whole series about identity, because I felt like we needed to get to know who we were, who we are, who we've become, before we can embark on anything that we want to do throughout the year. So if you'd like to go back to January and binge those, I highly recommend. Of course I recommend, because I did them. But this lie of I am not enough, when it comes up, I think the biggest fixes are just number one, remember your identity. Remember who you belong to. Remember the God who made you and why he made you and how he made you. I think that's number one. Stop equating worthiness with perfection. I think a lot of times we feel like we're not worthy or we're not enough because we're not complete, because we're not perfect, because we haven't cracked the code. You know what I mean? We haven't gotten to a point where life is wonderful and easy and, problem free. And so there must be something wrong with us. There must be a reason why we deserve hardship. You know what I mean? It's not the case. We will not be complete until we are standing before our Heavenly Father. Like, that's just it. Life is a journey. It's a pursuit. It's a mission. It's a calling. It's a process. We never arrive on this earth. If we ever arrive, well, our time here is done. So just remember, you may not be perfect, but it doesn't mean that you're not enough. You are a wonderful work in progress. We all are. Also, I want to encourage you that when you start feeling these feelings of not being enough, go do something for someone else. I think a lot of times we just think about ourselves too much. What do I look like? What do other people think I look like? How am I showing up? What do other people think that I'm doing as I show up? Like, we're constantly just focused on ourselves, and social media, I think, has really exacerbated that. It's made it so much worse. It's magnified it, because now, like, we're very concerned about not just how we're showing up in our lives, but how we show up on social media and how people perceive our lives based on our social media. You know what I mean? And so having our mind on ourselves, of course, we're always going to feel like we're inadequate and not worthy and not enough, because we're picking ourselves apart. Have you ever been like typing something for work or writing a text message and you spell a word and you're like, did I spell that right? And you look at the word so often and for so long that suddenly you're like, this isn't even a real word anymore. Did I just make this up in my mind? Or have you ever looked into a magnifying mirror? Oh my gosh, please don't look in a magnifying mirror. You will find flaws galore on your face. And it's just one of those things, like, when you're so focused on something, like, it distorts it in a sense. So I would encourage you that if you're feeling like you're not enough, go do something for someone else, and do something for someone else that has nothing to do with you. Like, don't expect a thank you. Don't expect any kind of fulfillment. Don't tack it on to something that you're already doing for yourself. So you might as well just do it for that person too. Like, oh, I went to go get myself coffee, so I just decided to get you a coffee too. No, like, how about you just go get them coffee because they want coffee? You know what I mean? I want to encourage you to do that. I think that when we are focused on ourselves, we can find that we're not worthy enough for ourselves. And when we can do something for someone else, it takes the attention off of us and puts it on another person. And I just think that's beneficial in so many ways. So this week, I want to encourage you to do that. Find something that you can do for somebody else that is all about them. Whether it's you go mow their lawn, or you run errands for this person, or you take something off their plate to make their life easier, like, just find something to do for somebody else, big, small, whatever it is, but it has to be about them. I think that will show you how you fit. Does that make sense? I think that oftentimes when people talk about purpose and calling, it's always centered on what I am supposed to be doing. What kind of benefit will I get from it? But I think our purpose and calling, the reason why, God gives us these gifts and stuff, is not for us, it's for other people. So when we can do things for others, I think it gives us a fulfillment and a love and a joy that will stir up feelings of enoughness, that will stir up feelings of worthiness, of I fit here, I'm a part of this, I'm doing something that makes me feel good. Yeah, it's totally about the other person, but like, I feel good doing it, I think humility brings on this feeling of worthiness. Like, that sounds so strange. Like, it makes sense in my mind. I hope that it makes sense when I say it out loud. And then I also want you to write down what you love about yourself. And not just like, I love that I'm a mom. I love that I'm a wife. Why? Do you love that you make time for your kids collectively, but you also make time for each of them individually? Write that down. I love that whenever, like, this is for me personally, I love that whenever my spouse asks me for help with something, that I do it. And again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but like, I know that makes me a good wife, and I like that about myself. And it's okay to say that, we don't have to be super, super humble here, So find some things that you genuinely and truly like about yourself. Ask God to reveal the wonderful things that he has put in you, that you, for whatever reason, have just put on a shelf, or you have just, kind of pushed to the wayside, or pushed back a little bit because, you've just decided that you can't be prideful in being proud of yourself, or you can't be prideful in loving yourself, or feeling like you showed up in a good way for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, recognize the good. I think it's okay to do that. You can take it to the extreme and suddenly you're just like, it's all about you and you're a little bit of a narcissist. But I also think it would be fun to do this exercise if you could think of what other people think good about you. Maybe you ask somebody, like maybe you ask your mom or your dad or your spouse or your kids, like, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I excel at? What do you think that what makes me me? What do you respect about me? What do you admire about me? Again, we're not trying to like build up this prideful feeling. We're just like I think oftentimes we're just harder on ourselves, and we forget that there are good things about us that other people recognize and love about us. But we, for whatever reason, have told ourselves like we're a self-centered person if we believe those things. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it would be fun for you to either ask those people or just write the things that you love about yourself from their perspective. You know what I mean? And again, just like, I would encourage you just to sit for just a moment and think about how God sees you too. You might not want to be, somewhere where you can't just like sob openly, because when I did that, yeah, I was sobbing like crazy because he just loves us so stinking much. And like, when we start seeing ourselves the way that he sees us, it will throw you into a fit of weeping. Like, it really, really will. So if you have some time to be by yourself, and if that feels uncomfortable for you to like put words in God's mouth, ask him, God, how do you see me? What do you see about me that is special, is meaningful, is wonderful, is your own little wink, like you put this in me, you made me like this because of, you knew that I could bring something to the world. You know what I mean? Get close with him and ask him those things. I think he delights in that, he delights in you. So I think he would love if you were like, God, like I'm struggling. I don't feel like I'm enough. Would you just help me to see myself the way that you see me? I find myself saying this to a lot of people these days. Like, the sooner you can recognize the way that God sees you, the better you're going to be. And more importantly, like, don't just think about the way God sees you, act like it, for crying out loud. Step into the person that he made you to be, and be bold in that, I don't think it's a prideful thing for you to recognize the way that God sees you and then live like that. I think he's waiting for you to do that. So I think, again, we talk about this lie of I'm not enough affecting so many other areas of our life. If we can start getting this right, if we can start valuing ourselves the way that God values us, if we can start seeing ourselves as a masterpiece more than a mess, I think it's going to be better for us. So I would encourage you to start dismantling that lie of I'm not enough. And I think you will see how drastically different your life starts to be. Your perspective on life will change. The way you interact with others will change. The way you show up for things in your life will change. The way that you care for yourself will change as well. And I think, we've talked about this before. If you can just fill up your vase, it will overflow into the vases around you. If you can fill yourself with love for yourself, you will start to love others more. If you can, value yourself more, you will start to value others more. And so I want to encourage you to do that. It's not always easy. I get it. But I think it's worth it. And I think God's waiting for you to do that. So thank you for joining me on the You're Lying to Yourself series. Feel free to binge if you haven't listened to the other episodes. And let's start getting our brains working in a way that we need them to work, in a good way. Make it a good week for yourself. I'll see you next week.